My father introduced me, and now it's my son's turn. Woodworking is a passion we'll share forever. Woodcraft understands that. Their people know the right tool for the job, and they make sure we understand how to use it. Their help? It means a lot. Woodcraft knows how we feel because they feel the same way. You know, I enjoy sharing my secrets, and now Jake's teaching me some things too. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Tight Bond Wood Glues, the pro's advantage.
Hello and welcome to I Can Do That. I'm your host, Chad Stanton. You know, on this show we've built a lot of furniture for the home, but I started thinking, why not something for the shop? So we've decided to make this little tool chest. Now, some features to the chest are we have the 4 drawers and a locking lid, but this lid opens up a little bit different. The actual front of it pivots up with the lid. This reveals this open, which is really nice because if you're in the shop and you're getting a lot of sawdust, well, now it'll wipe out nice and easy. Now the drawers also are locked in place. That's done by these dowel rods. The drawers are some simple but strong construction. You'll notice that the bottom of the drawer is also the glide for the drawer. The handle is just some simple angle iron that's drilled and screwed to the drawer front. And we do have a simple but strong joint construction here that we'll show you in a little bit. Now you can take the plans for this and modify to any size you want, but I thought this was a good size for placing on the bench. So without further ado, let's get some tools in here and start making our tool chest. I have the sides, the shelf, and the bottom laying here on the bench. Now, the original project was made out of oak and walnut. This one I'm making out of pine and oak. Now, the length and the dimensions for all this is included at the plans at the end of this video. But the sides and the shelf and bottom are all 1 by 12, and I've cut them to length. However, the top, well, the top is a little bit bigger, so I have a 1 by 12 and a 1 by 4 glued together, and I'm letting that dry up. I've also took some time to lay out some marks on here. These will be grooves. These grooves are actually going to be the slots for where the drawers will slide in. I also have to make a groove for the shelf piece here. That groove is a 1/4 inch bit, and I have it set up here in the router. It's a 1/4 inch bit, and I have it set a 1/4 inch down from the base plate. Now to route these, I need to have a straight edge. So I've got a scrap piece of wood, and I also have to take my compass and measure from the center of that bit to the outside edge of the router. And then I've made some marks here on the workpiece. So I'm going to nail this down. And now I can route my groove going across both side pieces. Now I'm going to move my straight edge, and I've marked again for the second groove, But this last one, I'm going to have to turn it around and have it facing towards me, so I'm going to move the router the opposite direction. And I'll repeat the same procedure for doing that on the shelf. Now I'm putting the pocket holes in for the shelf and the bottom, and normally I'm not too concerned where the pocket holes are lining up, but on this case I am. Because I have this groove, I want to make certain that the hole isn't going to be in the way. So I make sure that I'm offset so the screw doesn't come up through into the groove. Okay, I have 3 more holes to make and then I can start some assembly. Okay, so I have the side here, and the bottom is going to be pretty self-explanatory where that goes. But the shelf, from the plans, I had to make my line where I want it to line up. And it's not a bad idea to mark on which side of the line that you want your board to be positioned. Also, too, keep in mind there is going to be a front and back to this. So I chose this to be the front because you'll notice on the other side I have an ugly knot. And for the shelf, the front is going to be where that groove is. Well, sometimes that happens. Because these pocket screws are drilled on an angle, and I put some glue on there, that was enough to make it slide and miss the line. So I'm going to take this off while the glue is still wet. I'm going to put a clamp here, and that should act as like a fence to hold this in place. So that seemed like it worked pretty good for the shelf, and just to play safe, I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to do the same procedure for the other side, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, I have the sides all attached, and I'm getting ready to put the back on, and that's going to be some 1/4-inch hardboard. Now, to do that, I'm going to put a rabbet on it, and I have set up in the router a 1/4-inch rabbeting bit. I have it set so the bearing itself is a 1/4 inch from the edge, and then I set the base a 1/4 inch down. Now, it's also important too to pay attention what's your front and back, because it's easy to get confused. Remember, this groove designates the front of our project. Now, I'm working on the inside of this project, so I want to make sure I'm going clockwise with the router. Okay, I'm done with the router, but I still have to square up these corners because they're curved and I need that to be a nice true 90 degrees. So I'm just going to do that with a chisel. Once I get that done, I'll do 3 more and I can move to the next step. So I finished routing out for the back, but I'm not ready to put the back in yet. I have to put in a divider. Here, let's take a look at the finished one. So this divider is what's going to hold the two little drawers, and it has a groove in it just like for the side. The divider itself, well, it's attached through a couple of screws on top. Now this divider is not a standard size. I had to buy a 1x6 and rip it down, but that size, well, that's included in the plans. So for me to put that groove into my piece, I have another router set up here. This router has a fence on it, and that's important. I have a 1/4-inch straight bit in it, and the bit is set down from the bottom plate a 1/4-inch. It's also set a 1/4-inch from the fence. Now, if you have a router table, this is really ideal for it, but in this case, this is going to work just fine. Okay, I'll bring the rest of the tool chest back up here and attach it, and I'll show you how we're going to start making some drawers. The divider's in place, and there's a couple of things I wanted to point out with it. First of all, I have the divider flush with that rabbet cut on the back. Also, too, I wanted to make sure it's exactly in the middle so that these drawers will move evenly. And speaking of drawers, I have one done already. Now you'll notice that this side of the drawer, this side is pretty much flush with the front of it. The bottom will be just like that. However, the other side of the drawer, you can see it's offset a little. That's because I want to cover up this divider. When I build the other drawer, it too will be offset, and you won't even notice it. Now the drawer itself is made up of two different cuts. I have a 1/4-inch rabbet cut on the side pieces and a 1/4-inch groove on the front. And making this, well, it's going to be best done on the router table. So I have my pieces here ready for the second drawer, and I'm going to clear this off and bring in the router table and show you how to do this. I have the drawer front here, and I have some marks on it, so I want to show you what we have. I made a mark where the edge of the divider comes to the drawer front. I also have these marks where I want the groove to be. You can see that my 1/2-inch side, I'm making a 1/4-inch groove in it. I have that for both sides. Now the distance in the setup is different for each on this router here. But what I have is, I have the router set up to do this groove. So the bit is up a 1/4-inch, and it's away from the fence a 1/4-inch. Now it's important when I put my clamps down that I have the same distance from the fence to the edge of my table at both ends. Reason being is, if this fence was crooked one way or the other, as I'm pushing my miter gauge through, it's either going to pinch and bind or have too much slop to it. The other thing too is I put this sacrificial board onto the miter gauge, so that way I won't have a whole lot of tear out on my finished workpiece. All right, so let me go ahead and make the cut. Now this setup is exactly the same for the bottom two drawers, but because of this divider, I have to readjust this fence and make the other one. So I'll do that and then show you the next step. I've changed the router bit in the router, and I have a 1/4-inch rabbeting bit in here. What I'm trying to do is, I need to make a rabbet cut along the bottom of the drawer front. Reason being is, on the drawer, I want the bottom to be flush with that drawer front. Because when it's all done, I don't want to see the bottom sticking out from the front. So this will hide that. Now the setup for the bit, I have it raised up to the height of the hardboard, which is probably like 3/16. And I have the fence set so that the bearing is right in line with the fence. Okay, I'm going to make the cut. Now I'm going to use the same bit for the sides. I need to make the rabbet cut on it so it'll go into this groove. Now the odds are that this bit is too low, and that's okay. This is not going to be my final pass because I'm going to sneak up on it to get a good fit. Now because I'm going across the edge grain, I'm going to use my miter gauge again with a sacrificial board. It helps prevent that tear out. Okay, I'll make some adjustments, do a few more passes till I get it, and repeat the same thing on the other side. I have all the pieces for the drawer here, and before I glue it up, I want to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use the bottom and set it into the rabbet on the drawer front. This is going to help determine the height for the sides. Now the back, this is just going to be a glued butt joint. Now normally when I make drawers, I like to measure from corner to corner to make sure that it's square. But in this case, I'm never going to get the same measurement because of this offset. So in this case, the easier way for me is to use a square and square it up. Now I'm going to glue the sides, the back, and the front, and once that dries, then I'm going to glue on the bottom. So I'll show you that once this is done drying. So my drawer is glued and dried up, and I put a couple of brads on the back there for it too. Now when I put the bottom on, it seems tempting to line the bottom up with the drawer front, but you'll notice that the offset for what would be the glides aren't equal. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I have a combination square, and I have it set to 1/4 inch, and I'm going to do that for both sides. Okay, let me put some glue on this and set it in place. Now on this hardboard, it's real smooth on one side and the other side has a texture. And for me, I'm having the smooth side up because I think that's going to glide easier in the grooves. Okay, I'm going to get a few short little brads, nail this in place, and I'm good to go. So I'm done with the drawers, and I went ahead and glued and nailed the back on. Now the middle drawer, I have this divider that hangs down a little bit. So to make sure I have clearance on the back of the middle drawer, I used my saw and a chisel to notch that out. The next thing I'm going to work on is putting the back and the front of the lid. But because of this groove here, that means I have to make a rabbet cut on that front lid piece. So I'm going to have to bring the router table back out. So I have a 1/2 inch bit in the router. It's raised up a 1/2 inch and it's sticking out a 1/4 inch from the fence. Now I could have used a 1/4 inch bit if that's all I had. But the 1/2 inch bit is going to make a cleaner, smoother cut for me. So let's see how it fits. Hey, that's nice. Now, just check the ends, maybe a little planing there to get it level. And then the back, well, this will go in and just get glued and nailed from the sides. From there, I'm going to start working on making the lock mechanism. So I have the lock into the front part of the lid here, and the lock was a simple file cabinet lock you can pick up. But I had to modify it some to actually get it to work. When you buy the lock, it comes with a variety of different arms. None of the arms did exactly what I wanted, so I had to file that notch into it to kind of make it look like a J. From there, I place it in position, and where the arm comes down and makes contact with the shelf, I drew a couple of pencil lines for the width of it. And I need to notch this out with an 1/8 inch chisel so that that arm moves freely down into the wood. So I'll do that next, and then I'm going to show you how it actually will lock and secure itself. I've took the time to make the notch for the lever to go into. Now, I used an 1/8 inch chisel, and you're probably not going to find that at a big box store. In fact, I had to buy mine at Woodcraft. But you could use an 1/8 inch drill bit, drill a series of holes, and then with a marking knife clean it up. Now, here's what you're looking for. When I put this in, I want to make sure that I have no resistance with that arm swinging into the slot. Now, what's going to make it lock and be secured? Well, it's just simply a screw and a washer. Now, you might have to play with this a little bit and adjust the placement of the screw and the washer, but what we're looking for is that to go in, and you shouldn't be able to lift up on it. Okay, now that I got the lock working, I'm going to bring in the top and get that aligned so we can close this all up. I'm getting ready to put the top on, so what I did was I took a piano hinge and I placed it on the back as well as the back of the front piece here. Now, it's important that I get this lined up just right on the lid so it all operates correctly. So I'm going to place the top on here, and the first thing I want to do is I want to measure so I have equal distance on the sides. Then I'm going to take a pencil and mark the edge as well as the front of this. Now I can take my piece, and from my pencil lines, I can place the front on it and put a couple of screws in. Now I'm just doing a couple of screws because if I have to make adjustments, it's going to be easier to do that. But once I get it set and working right, well, I'll go back and put all the screws in. Okay, I'll place this on the box. And again, I'll put just a couple of screws in the back. And let's see how she does. Hey, that's pretty good. But I want to be cautious because this lid can tip all the way back and I'm afraid it'll pull right out. So I made a couple of stop blocks. And these will just simply screw on here, so when the lid comes up, it has some support. Okay, I'm going to screw these on, put some more screws in the hinges, and then I'm going to put some handles on the drawers. So I'm putting the last of the handles on the drawers. And the handles are just simply some angle iron. This is aluminum, and it makes it really easy to cut and drill through. Now, even though I cut it, I still have to notch it so it goes around the sides. And then this will just get screwed in. The last thing I need to do is make sure I can lock those drawers. And the drawers are getting locked by this 3/8 dowel rod that goes in. Now, what I would suggest is getting a pilot bit. This is a very long and skinny bit. This way I can drill down and I can use a square to help keep it straight. And I'm going to drill down, and I just need to go through the first and second drawers. After I get that pilot hole drilled, I can go back and drill it larger with the 3/8. It's a lot easier than trying to measure each drawer because I'm pretty certain it won't be exact for the dowel rod to go in. Okay, let me do that, and I'll show you how it all goes together. Okay, I've got the drilling all done, and I'm just setting the last drawer in. This project is done and good to go. Well, I think you'll find this is perfect for the shop. And you can dress it up with some nicer wood. Who knows, maybe you'll find a place for it somewhere in the house. At any rate, I think you'll enjoy making this project and using it. So tune in to another episode of I Can Do That and see what we're making. Hello and welcome to I Can Do That. Is that better?